Good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Katie Gideon. I will be the on-camera facilitator for this Sunday morning social. And as I was watching the chat, I realized there were some names that I hadn't seen in a while. And then I kind of went back to thinking, I was like, I don't think I've done a Sunday morning social in a while in any sort of capacity. So it's really nice to be back. I am dialing in from Tulsa, Oklahoma. I did move back to the States and I'm so excited, so happy to be here. It's actually pouring down rain though. Wish it was a little bit nicer Sunday, but glad to be here. But I loved seeing all of our returning socialers in the chat. Welcome. It is so good to see all of you. But if there's anybody new, or if this is your first social, or maybe your first setup social, we would love to welcome you as well. But in order to participate in the larger group chat, just make sure that it is set to everyone. If it is set to host and panelists, which is the default, that comes to just myself and Bailey, which a shout out to my co-host, Bailey, who you'll see in the chat. Bailey and I always have a great time together. And yes, super glad to be in the same time zone because we enjoy all of these things together. But then I also saw that someone had mentioned that they're really just going to be participating in the chat. They're just having a rough day or recovering from, I think it was a foot reconstruction. And that's what's great about these socials is because you can participate in as much or as little as you want. And that could be anything from just being here in the chat, supporting each other, providing kind of feedback, all of those great ideas there. Or maybe it is just sitting and working on your journal. And then we always say that if I am too much, you can mute me. If the music is too much, you can mute it. But we are just glad that you've set aside this time to come and connect with your Sonder fan, as well as just use this to kind of be whatever kind of self-care journey you're on and this time that you've set aside for yourself, especially as we prepare for the week ahead. As always, please be kind and courteous to yourself and others. No promotions or spam. Respect everyone's privacy. No hate speech or bullying. Limit repetitive product and accessory questions. But we always add a caveat to that because we like to talk about products and we know you all like to connect about other products as well. We just ask that it does not detract from the larger setup that we're here, but we love to share all of those things, especially anything that can kind of help pull someone out of a funk or help with a new perspective or a new approach. And then as always, while Bailey and I have some information, we will most likely redirect more of your customer care inquiries to our headquarters team, hello@silkensonder.com. And what we always say, if you have feedback about the journal, about the material, about the images, about the products, definitely reach out to hello@silkensonder.com. We do read all of that feedback, but keep in mind that does take time to kind of go into evolvement because a lot of these templates and a lot of these things are set out pretty far in advance. We already have kind of a map of the rest of the year's themes, which is really exciting. But we do make those changes. It just may have a little bit of a time scale, but we always appreciate the feedback. And then as always, Sonder Socials are a tool to help elevate your emotional health through the power of community, but you're responsible for your own emotions, well-being, and decisions. And I always like to frame this a little bit. If you've had a bad day, if you've had a bad week, we're glad that you've come exactly as you are. But this shouldn't be triggering. You shouldn't leave these socials more upset or kind of feeling like you now have a to-do list that has grown exponentially. You should be able to kind of give yourself a little bit of grace, but at the same time, it's also being just in a different mental headspace, emotional headspace. As I said, I just moved back from the States, so my sleep cycle is still all over the place. As I was telling Bailey, my stuff is literally all over the place in a couple different countries. So it has been really difficult for me to focus on some of these kind of, as we say, the elegant simplicity of some of these journal steps. I've had a really tough time with some of the mind map questions just because they're requiring a lot of internal kind of quiet meditation and reflections. And that is just not where my headspace is at the moment. So I have been trying, but I've been giving myself time and a little bit more, more time to kind of approach some of these questions. But at the end of the day, this shouldn't again be triggering. It should be something that you kind of walk away with at least a lighter or a positive feeling, a little bit more enthusiasm or excitement, or maybe I come across with like some weird blooper in this thing and you walk away laughing at my expense, which is honestly perfect. But we love all of that there, but it's more of you can come exactly as you are, participate in as much or as little as you want, get as much or as little as your journal done as well. We're just glad that you showed up for yourself. So, we are now still talking about the awareness theme, which is April. And I love the alliteration. I love tricking my brain into thinking things are immensely more meaningful just with the sheer fact that they rhyme. So, I love the April awareness, and that has been somewhat helpful in helping my kind of somewhat scatterbrain focus a little bit more because I'm like, ooh, new fixation with the alliteration. And I came across these two quotes. Awareness precedes change, and then being awake means how aware you are in all that you do. You may be alive, but that does not mean you are awake consciously. So, what I appreciated about this is I have a military background and I became fixated on the concept of situational awareness, which I know sounds really silly and it sounds very dramatic, but I think it becomes one of those things you start to kind of have awareness in your peripheral, and I think it all comes back to the phrase of like trying something new or making a change even when you're not prepared. And I think part of that preparation is having some of those situational awareness around you of different variables that are coming into alignment so that you can make a change or make an adjustment or start preparing for some of those changes. And I think it goes back to and my work contract ended in the UK, but I kind of saw that coming because I knew what the market was doing. I knew what some of these other things were happening. So I was a little bit more prepared for that potential like change. But I think it also is something that you can do because I do think, especially with us all being women, there's a situational awareness that you have when you go out, when you do things at night. I started driving a car again because my car's back here. So it was all those little factors of I don't know if I have been this cautious of a driver since I was maybe 16. And granted, it's a great thing, but it's all those pieces that kind of fit together and you don't realize that you're doing it. It just becomes one of those natural things. But I think it is certainly something to consider as you tap into that, where it's like, if a friend has said something and that kind of aligns with something else, it's almost a little bit of like you can kind of turn it into some predictive things. And I think that builds to the awareness. But at the same time, I think it's also tying that into how are you using your situational awareness to potentially push forward some change, push forward new things. And that can be everything from setting a new boundary. Is that more what your situational awareness spidey senses are telling you? But I think it's, again, and I love the idea of being aware versus being awake, because at the same time you can be awake, but not always aware. So I think it was tapping into a little bit more of those almost cerebral senses, which sounds really pretentious. But I just thought it was an interesting take. And I think it was more of I needed to do something in my head because my head has just been, like I said, quite busy, but I still have been picking up on some of those, like I said, kind of situational awareness things of, well, this can happen, this can happen, this can happen, and seeing it kind of trickle through. So it's like, how can I take some of those spidey senses and turn it into something that I can harness? But as always, we love to hear kind of your thoughts and opinions as we've moved into the full week two of the awareness theme. But I always appreciate everyone's perspective on those because they're so great. And now this is going to be our agenda where we have our awareness mind map, which we're going to tackle right after this. And then we have our rosebud thorn exercise that's going to be on page 36. And then we're going to work on those weekly setup pages, which are going to be page 40 and 41 in your journal. And as always, I will provide the slides and the prompts, and then I will go off camera, play some music. But if you need me to go back to slides or have different questions, just let us know in the chat and we will certainly help those out. So, as we said, the mind map that is really unique to the weekly setup socials. We love these. They have been great. I can attest that Bailey wrote these this month, and I think they're fantastic. They're kind of certainly what I needed, but as I said, they've been tricky and tricky in a very different way that I haven't always experienced with the mind map. So I love a good challenge. But if you go ahead and please turn to your mind map that you've already created. If you haven't created one, this is not printed in your journal. It's an opportunity to either use the weekly scratch pad, a blank page, that back page for team page 60, or even just another little note there. But we love the unique ability that you have to kind of tailor this into what's going to inspire you. How are you feeling this month? What is going to be that inspiration point? And I know we have a whole bunch of people that love stickers, so I have embraced this kind of as my sticker page. Makes me really happy. And I think I mentioned that someone, or I saw that someone had missed a previous weekly social. Don't worry, we include the previous mind maps questions there. And so don't think of it as like you've missed something or that you have to do homework. That's not the case, but you do have those options. And what we love about the mind maps is you may kind of not hit the inspiration bug this early this morning, but you have the entire week to go through and kind of think of all of these things. Excuse me. So with week one, we did a sensory grounding reflection, which is just those really great opportunities of quieting your mind and taking a few deep breaths, tuning into those five senses, but then taking it a next step and adding an opportunity for gratitude to it, which I thought was a really clever way of doing that, because I know for those families that are impacted by neurodivergent children or teachers, educators that do that, that is always a great kind of anxiety tool as well to kind of do that. And now we're going to move into the week two, which is that mind body reflection, which is why I thought of the situational awareness. Because, like I said, my mind and body not quite connected right now, but I do think there's that kind of spidey sense that's doing it. So, what I love about this is I think about the last time you felt stressed or anxious. Did it cause any emotions or physical sensations? The next time you feel stress building, what is something you can do to care for yourself? So this is kind of my thoughts and takes on it. The first three questions were taken directly from the previous slide, but then I added a few others. Did you notice if it's more of a physical response or more of a mentality, especially when it comes to, the physical or emotional stress cues? Because I think in terms of my sister, she tends to have more of a physical response. I tend to have more of a mental response. So I do know that those are two very different facets, and some can be kind of your canary in a mine shaft, and some can be a little bit earlier than other. And then is there something that you've noticed before and were able to make changes? Because I also love the idea of maybe you're not quite feeling those triggers right now or can't think of anything recently, or even kind of future techniques. Maybe you've lived through those things, and so you want to almost celebrate or acknowledge the work or the effort or the just kind of giving it a moment when you kind of were in that situation and you were able to get yourself out. So I also want to be a gentle reminder that with this prompt, we don't want to recreate the stress or anxiety. So don't live in that stress or anxiety inducing event. Just acknowledge that, hey, I had hit this point and I was in a little bit moment of this, and here's how I corrected it. Don't go back and figure out why we got to that point. It was when it happened and you corrected it, or what are things that you think that will help you correct it. This becomes that kind of causation thing. We don't want to know the cause, but we want to aid the symptoms. So for me in particular, I kind of went down a direction of um, I have the work dreams, and I always refer to them as the work dreams. And it's more because I don't tend to dream about work. I don't tend to dream in like realistic scenarios. But when I have the work dreams, that means they're almost so vivid that when I wake up, it was like, did I have that conversation or did I not have that conversation? And I start to panic over maybe situations that didn't happen or how a scenario is going to play out. And that is when I know that I am stressed about this situation and I have to ask for help, or I have to handle it, or have to do something because then that becomes that weird blurring. But I absolutely know if I have had a work dream, I am stressed or I am bothered by work in some way, shape, or form, and it is something I have to fix. So that's where I talk about some of the situational awareness. If that starts creeping into my dream world, things have happened and I need to address them in the real world. But I just feel like that is a very clear thing. I'll wake up from those in just a frenzy and I'm overly tired. I have low energy. So it just kind of wrecks a lot of things because I personally, I don't really get nervous. I don't have that type of acknowledgement. So I can't always make that thought, but man, it comes full force in the dreams and it just makes you uncomfortable because you're like, I've lost the plot. And that's perfectly fine. So as always, please take this time to work on your week two prompt, or maybe you want to work on something else. But I'm going to turn on some music and we will see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. I appreciated everyone being a bit vulnerable with talking about kind of how you, one, kind of what can potentially trigger you on some of those stress or anxious feelings, which I always feel is really brave because, me personally, I see showing stress or showing anxiety as almost like a little bit of a like hole in the armor. So even just being able to kind of share that with the Sonder fam, I think is really lovely, knowing that it can go, unjudged or it's not going to be used against you. In the kind of work professions I have, if people could know what your stress was going to be breaking, you would get that little asterisk of like, don't put them in this situation because this could happen. So I do find that surprisingly acknowledging just being stressed and anxious is a weaker spot, but I appreciate that some people dive into their hobbies, some people will dive into their professional care, therapists, doctors, those type of things. And then it's even something as simple as acknowledging that you can feel something mentally and emotionally and some things aren't matching. And so it's that kind of how can I make this better? How can I turn inward to support myself? I think it was Ashley that said that she found that just even smiling makes it a little bit better. And I love that because I feel like it's that moment where I don't know if we always tune into ourselves that deeply, or even just working in that kind of realm of space and connection. And I think it's really great, especially with this theme, to kind of sit there and have those moments to kind of figure it out. I come from a science background, so I always call it as like, the scientific method. You're doing the research ahead of time because sometimes you don't have the step forward. You don't know what your next action item is, but figuring out, building those connections, understanding where those, I think it was Doreen that talked about the neural pathways of the work stress streams that need to kind of find new connections or kind of almost sever those relationships. I think that becomes part of the research that you do or the kind of pre-work that you do to then be aware of some of those change opportunities and change potential so that you can then come up with those pivot or those action items. So do not think because you don't have an action item doesn't mean that you're not moving forward. Sometimes the most valuable thing is understanding and then researching and then kind of figuring out what the game plan could then look like. And as always, please continue to share your responses in the chat, even as I move to the next section. I just find it a little bit freer, a little bit easier to just kind of throw those things out into the universe, kind of take them off of my plate a little bit and put them into the, like the communal plate. And don't worry, we facilitators will dispose of that later, metaphorically. But I think it's just a really great time to do this. And as always, if the inspiration didn't hit you, or again, you're just bombarded with all of the thoughts and feelings and emotion, that's okay. Give yourself a little break, grace, move to another section. But at the same time, I loved where people, maybe had missed a week or a couple different sections and they moved the, let it go, move on. Some of the pointed stickers got brought in, and that's okay. There is no journal police. And so sometimes you need to take what you need, and sometimes what it is telling you is that you need to take a little bit of a break, and that's okay. So now we're going to move to page 36 for that rosebud thorn reflection, which again, this is a great tool that you're able to kind of take a look at and give the week that you had its moment in that reflective capacity to acknowledge the rose, acknowledge the thorn, and then get excited about the bud or acknowledge that the bud is coming. And then you get to take that almost like intentional moment to decide, am I bringing this energy with me? Am I bringing this momentum and mentality with me? Or is it just going to get left today? And it's not going to be brought into the week with us. And so I think it's a really powerful one that is really great. And so I like to start at the top because that's how the brain works. The rose, so it's going to be a highlight, something that made you smile, something that was a win, something that went well, something that you're happy about, proud about, all of those amazing positive things. For me, really, it's something fun. I have missed watching random sports where I was. And so it's so nice to be able to bounce back between, I just would say maybe sports I grew up with, or maybe it's the classic Americana sports. But I've really enjoyed basketball. I've been watching hockey. And then my parents and I get really excited about college softball, specifically the University of Oklahoma Sooner softball. Going to see them this weekend in Norman, but I love watching softball. It's so much fun. We get really into it. The basketball has been great. I think it's also just Oklahoma has a couple pretty good teams out there, so it's fun to get excited about that because we don't always get to. But I even was thrilled that I had the opportunity to maybe watch the Masters if I wanted to. Golf makes me sad and bored, but the option is there if I want to do it. So I think it's just been one of those really great things. And so yes, we are on page 36. And then, the bud is going to be an emerging opportunity, something that you're excited about, something that you're enjoying, something that is out on the horizon and you haven't quite figured it out yet. I feel like now ages ago, I lived in California for 12 years and I loved Pilates. Specifically, Club Pilates was the in like the group that I did. And they have one here that's very close to my parents' house. So I've started that up again. I've taken two classes. And there's so much of the like muscle memory that's come back. And then there's just the, oh, I haven't done this in a really long time. And I know I'm going to be sore. But I love the structure. I love the flow. I've missed a lot of those things. So I think it comes back to my theme last year was back to basics. That was kind of my first, that was kind of my thought with my word of the year. So I feel like it just comes to that like somewhat happy place that is you leave in pain because it's a good pain, but it's still a happy place. And then the thorn is a challenge, something that maybe didn't go so well. The roadblock, the speed bump, or as I've kind of reframed it, because I don't want to dwell on the negative too much, is something that is taking up too much time, energy, or effort in your mind, body, or a soul. And for me, the wind, and I get it. I know all the cliches about Oklahoma being very windy, but it just makes everything more challenging. And same thing with I haven't had allergies in ages, but this kicks it up. And so the allergies are kind of just brutal. So I think it's just back to the chaotic Oklahoma weather, which is fine, but it's certainly inconvenient some things sometimes. So please join us on page 36, and we would love to celebrate those roses with you, get excited about the buds that are to come, and send a little extra thoughts, prayers, ideas, all of those amazing things to help you tackle or feel better about those thorns. We'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. And yes, the Cynthia mentioned the Artemis landing, which I know we are a large group that cover a lot of decades and all of those different moments. And I think it was one of those, my family watched it. It was my mom, my dad, me, and my 5-year-old nephew. So he was enthralled. He was fascinated, asking all the questions. We were doing all the narration, and my mother's kind of sitting there watching it through her hands, because she remembers the last time kind of all of these things happened and watching it live. And she would just kept being like, "Are we sure we should be watching this?" So I know that was certainly of mixed emotions for anybody that watched that, but it was amazing. It was really cool. Luckily, everything went well, but I just thought it was a very interesting feel of emotions where everyone was watching it in very different thoughts and feelings. You had the magic and the awe of the unknown and the 5-year-old and the somewhat preparing for a lot of different scenarios on the older end of our spectrum watching this, but it was amazing. It was quite the feat. But thank you everybody for sharing. It looks like we did have again a wide range of roses, buds, and thorns, but quite a few definitely heavy thorns. So always want to take that moment to share everything. And sometimes it's just really nice again to throw these things out into the universe without any kind of feedback or really just that kind of really lovely, gentle guide or the reminder of someone sees it and they can either understand it or they're at least thinking of you in that type of scenario. And that's what I like about the reflections. I think this is one of those being able to take back some of that control a little bit, but also that's what makes these socials so special is that amazing concept of Sonder, of people are living amazingly vivid lives with the roses, the buds, and the thorns as it's going along. And sometimes it makes you feel just a little less alone that someone is kind of going through something either similar or who has been through it and realizing that there is something on the other side, or getting excited about all those things that we can collectively get excited about, which I feel like, again, true Americana sports. I saw Heather was shouting out her hockey team and all those little things, but also being here for each other in some of those darker times, because I know a lot of folks are having really challenging medical and health journeys with their families. And those are always tough, but we all have the strength to kind of work through it as best we can, but always be gentle. Give yourself some thoughts, and give yourself the time and the energy to kind of come back from it or even just acknowledge it. And sometimes it's something as simple as this type of exercise, or even something a little bit more drastic of setting a lot of things aside and just giving yourself moments to just breathe. So we are now going to move to page 40 and 41 in your April journal, and these are going to be our weekly setup pages. Page 40 is going to be the first one, and page 41 is going to be the second one. And I always like to reframe this a little bit. And I feel like if you've come to my socials before, I get a little bit rehearsed or a little bit of a broken record when it comes to these, because I always like to start with what do you need this week? Because sometimes what you need this week is exactly as written on the page. You need to fill out all the different sections. They need to somehow connect to each other. Maybe they don't need to connect to each other. Sometimes you then maybe need a complete revamp, a repurpose, a re-inspiration of these sections or pages. And that's also great, because maybe that is what you need. Or sometimes what you need from this is a break. And sometimes it will gently remind you that you need a break, but sometimes it will slap you in the face and say you need a break. I feel like I've had those moments of the aha is a little bit harsher than it probably should be. But there is a lot of potential in all of these pages. And I also feel like it's breaking the idea of breaking with perfection, because what we sit here and do now, maybe that is not what Wednesday you needs either. So you can always make changes, always rewrite it, or always just kind of scrap it as like, this was probably not the best week. That's okay. We get to start anew, and take that opportunity to kind of try something again. And so we're going to start at the top of page 40 with that. This week I want to feel. I always like to rephrase this of how I want to feel this time next week. It was actually something that Mayha brought up in the Sonder Circle era, if you've been with Silk and Sonder that long. And I loved that idea because this was an opportunity for me to kind of I'm goal oriented, which has its pros and cons, but I appreciate the fact that I can set myself this goal of here's how I want to feel. And I exclude all of the to-dos and the goals and all of those other things because as I'm experiencing those rows and buds and thorns of the week, this is something that will always bring me back to center. This will always be that equalizer. And so it's something that I can kind of think of, and then I can come back and, as Bailey eloquently put it, sometimes this is just data. You can't take data personally. It is something you can pivot to. And so it gives me an ability to then kind of step out of myself and acknowledge how the data went that week. Did I meet that goal? Did I have to make some changes? Did I even exceed my expectations? So that's how I approach that. But maybe it's just this week I want to feel. Maybe you have a hard time with this one, and so you want to go through and fill out all of the pages and come back and summarize how you think your week is going to go. And so I think that's something. It can be percent betters. It can be more of something, less of something. It can be a specific word. I think it was Nicole that said maybe simple was going to be on the word of the how you want to feel. Maybe it's your word of the year. Maybe it is leaning into the theme. So maybe you want to feel situationally aware. And so sometimes it can be those little things. And then I love that pictures are worth 1,000 words. So maybe it's a doodle, a sticker, some sort of acknowledgement there. But I love the intentional optimism that this can kind of bring with kind of how you want to feel. And sometimes it's kind of exactly how you felt last week because it was a pretty good week. So I'm going to play a quick song. And if you want to share in the chat this week you want to feel, we'll see you soon. Okay, so now that we have this week, I want to feel, I am now going to combine the next two sections, those weekly major three goals and the weekly to-dos, but we're still on page 40. And I love the major three goals idea just because I use these as the mental and emotional reminders to get me through the week. So to me, these are the kind of squishier things that I just need to tell myself. And that's been everything from excuse myself from the unimportant, hydrate, and this time it is definitely like get sleep, listen to your body because I am still, falling asleep at like 6 p.m. and then still getting up at like 3 a.m. So I'm having to kind of make a little bit more of a constant effort of actually attempt to create and function on a more realistic sleep schedule here. But we do love the idea of categories. And so maybe you have a mind goal, a body goal, a soul goal. Maybe it is leaning into tricking your mind into thinking something's more fun than it is with the alliterations. I love the revisit, restore, and relax. Maybe it is just the three things that you need to do or the three bigger ideas with the, release stagnation, choose novelty, cultivate learning. Maybe you want to lean into more of the four C's just because it says three, you can have anywhere between between no goals all the way up to, any number of goals. I liked the four C's, which is a create goal, which is for you, the consume goal, which is for others, cavort, which is a moving goal, and commune, which is social. And then the reason we like to combine these sections a bit is because quite a few of our socialers will have the categories that are directly linked to the to-do list, as the example in the bottom. And then we do love a good bingo board. So the gamification of that to-do list is there. Maybe it's leaning into the Frog Fun Fierce. Maybe it is like the three things that joke need to get done. And that I feel like this time of year, it's always taxes gets its own like category. Or maybe it's coming back from spring break and you just really need to plan on one thing. So you have a big goal that everything else is feeding to, or just that's where your priority needs to be. I think Nicole, yours is that top left one. So those are more of the quotes or the mantras, the affirmations that are going to help you with those weeks as well. And then same thing with maybe you need to flip the two sections because the template works better. Maybe it's two categories, home and work. Um, and then if you overlay those weekly to-dos, they can go hand in hand with those goals, or maybe those are completely separate. But your weekly to-dos can be what we consider the traditional to-do list, or maybe it's more of the to-do list, as I was joking last week. The Eisenhower matrix is now more for the household because I do now have people to delegate to, but them being my parents, the delegation has fallen a little bit more to me because they delegate stuff to me, and I did not consider that part of the Eisenhower matrix, that they could do their own Eisenhower matrix that impacts my Eisenhower matrix. And so my delegation responsibilities has multiplied, and that's perfectly fine, but it was an unexpected an unexpected addition to my to-do list. So you can kind of take that approach. Maybe it is a ta-da bingo. I saw that someone had a birthday, and so maybe it's leaning into some of those or more the fun to-dos. Maybe it is just the simple act of recategorizing your to-dos into needs and wants. Don't do this instead. Calling them different categories, maybe having a different to-do for each day to break up that to-do list into a different format. Maybe it's the gentle to-be reminder or a not to-do, or almost kind of micromanaging yourself, which I know can be a dirty word, but sometimes that's what helps when you have a lot of different things in a bunch of different directions. So it's the work to-dos, the personal to-dos, and in that need and want category. So I am going to give you some time to work on these. Let me know if you need to go back to a different example. I'm going to turn on a song and we'll see you soon. So now we're going to move into that bottom section on page 40, which is the habit and activity tracker. And the way I use this is I want to do three things every single day. And I take them directly from my monthly habit tracker. Those are things I want to do every single day. And then when I bring them into my weekly spread, that is realistically how much time, energy, and attention I can give to them based on my work schedule, my personal schedule, whatever hobbies or other events I've scheduled. And so you can kind of take that approach, or you can have completely different habits and activities that you want to do, and you can set goals to those. Or maybe this is where those gentle mental and emotional reminders are. Maybe this is the section that you need a break from. I feel like when I get a little overstretched or have a heavy workload or a lot of stuff going on, this is certainly a section that I take off the table almost immediately, because I know I can cover it on my monthly habit tracker. But sometimes this is kind of what I need to help for the structure. And sometimes I feel like this is just something additional that I don't think I want to spend time and energy on. But I do love the template of having weekdays can look a little bit different than the weekends. And just because there are 5 lines, maybe it's more of 3 things or 2 things or 1 thing, or like I said, no things. But it also is a way to kind of add structure if you are also finding a little challenging to kind of get back into a journaling routine. I think this is a great section to help with that, because you can add, check in with the daily affirmation, check in with the daily ritual, work on your coloring page, try out the recipe, check in with your intentions. So I think it is an opportunity to kind of come back and help you focus on that if that is what you need that week. And then you all know I love my iconography. I love the Ambitiously Alexa account for the challenges that she does every day, because I do think these are really fun, and I think they're really a good idea. And a lot of them are things that we're maybe already kind of doing. So I think it's an easy addition to kind of my routine for sure. And then I have repurposed my expense tracker for my bucket lists or adventure lists. And I think this is also really fun because, again, I think these are amazing things that you do. Why not give them their special moment? Because it's everything from going for a walk in nature to trying a new recipe with berries. If you all found ways to celebrate Easter, I think that's always a great thing. Or even something as simple as, like, do you have a specific spring perfume, or do you have a perfume that you save for special occasions? And like I said, today it's a rainy, crappy day, so I am, required because of my bucket list to have a rainy day movie marathon. So some of those Eisenhower Matrix delegation things are just not going to get done today, and that's okay. But I love the ideas here. I love the inspiration. All of these I do get off of Instagram. And if you haven't curated your social media to find the things that make you happy, I highly recommend taking the time to do it. It is changing. It's almost life changing, but I love all of those ideas. And like I said, this is now what my social media feeds are. And I love that. So I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to play a quick song, and we'll see you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. And I am trying to be aware of the time, but we're going to flip over to page 41, which I lovingly refer to as the B side. This is the second page. I'm going to combine all of these sections because we do get a lot of folks that repurpose these different sections in various ways. So we will start at the top. Again, page 41 with the meal plan, and you can absolutely use it as a meal plan. You can use it something as you want to plan for, or you can do it as a real-time tracker, especially if you are tracking symptoms or working with a healthcare professional in that capacity. That is where I got the inspiration, Kenyatta, of the DMX school-friendly version, because I thought that clip was really funny. But maybe this is where your one good thing lives. Maybe this is where you just need to take a little bit of a break from everything. So it's the daily doodles, something a little bit more creative. Maybe this is where the daily affirmations live, or the inspiration if you work with Jenny, our AA coach, that provides some of those journal prompts. Maybe this is where you can kind of catalog them. I absolutely love this for a packing or a wardrobe planner. I used to be a shoe heavy packer, and now I can comfortably and confidently potentially pack only one pair of shoes or maybe two pair of shoes. And I consider that a massive win. So that has just relieved a lot of the travel stress that I have with the right suitcase, the right combination, and being well under the weight requirements as needed. So I highly recommend it for that. But again, maybe this is where your kind of closing instructions are for each day. What I love about the Mind Body Health Plan, that's another something that you can plan for, or it is something that you can do in real time, as again, a little bit of a tracker. You can lean into the alliterations of the week. You can lean into the days of today. Maybe it is asking yourself what you feel and what you need for more of that situational awareness when it comes to the mind-body connection, or any type of awareness at this point. Maybe this is where a bucket list lives, or tapping into the 7 types of rest, or maybe a hobby log, so reading. I know a lot of people still work on the spring cleaning component, so maybe this is your decluttering or cleaning plan. Again, you all know I love my iconography, so I love the idea of little things we're smiling about, spring edition, and people to keep in your life, because I feel like that should also maybe be a part of a decluttering plan in some capacity, but always really fun to consider. And then the shopping list, that's going to be the very last section kind of on this page. That can go hand in hand with the meal plan, or you can repurpose it with a bingo board, a themed bingo board. We love a good theme, but maybe it's the quotes, the self-care reminders. Maybe it is a social check-in. If you maybe work from home or work at a desk, these are those breaks that you can take. Maybe a don't buy idea, or even just the gentle reminders for to be, or maybe this is where that wardrobe tracker lives. But the ability to purpose this, and sometimes it is just throwing a sticker on it and moving on. So I'm going to go back through all of these, play one more song, and then we will close out this social. See you soon. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. And apologies, I'm going to run a little long. I let Vanessa run a little long, which was perfectly fine. But that very last section is the I am loving on page 41. And this is a really amazing thing that you can just shout out what is making you happy, what is making you smile, what you are loving. And then we do have the currently page on 39 that I highly recommend you tackling if you don't. I love this page. I am an avid reader, so I love that there are three lines because that gives me a beginning, a middle, and the end. And I do get to tell the story of my month based on what I am currently feeling. So I have it at the beginning of the month, the middle of the month, and the end of the month. So they do become really lovely stories that are just really simple. And as I always say, people stop asking you as the older you get, the less fun questions of what's your favorite dinosaur, what's your favorite animal. And I feel like these are those questions. And it's so much fun to do those. And then, as always, can you believe we have reached the end? I know we have because we went over. I'm sorry. I just got really chatty, and that's okay. We love to continue the conversation in this Look and Slender app. So please join us over there if you want to share your pages. We love to get inspiration there. And I know your fellow Sonder fam loves to get the inspiration as well. And we are the best set of accountability buddies, in my opinion. We do have our exclusive coming up April 21st. That does come with a fee, but if you're interested, please sign up. And then Bailey is putting those links in the chat as well. We also have a really great option, especially for maybe some of the male figures in your life. Minimalist digital journal is great. It could be a husband, partner, or any of those, or just another opportunity to expand it. You do have a little bit more control, especially on the digital side, but I get it. Some people are more the pen to paper. I am one of those. I did beta test the digital, and I just found myself still reaching for the paper, which is great. This is a copy of my playlist. I will include the link in the chat. But as always, we love that you joined us. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. You're going to have an amazing week, and we hope to see you at a future event real soon. Bye.
Today is bound to be one of the most beautiful days in history. I got my sneakers on, shuffling through the neighborhood, no stopping me.